Just gotta get some water for the start of the video, and then we can start. Ah! Who put this full office chair in the middle of the kitchen?
Hello, this is Just Weston, and welcome to Learn by Painting. In this installment, we will be learning about the effects of priming your minis and what earth elementals are in the realms of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, let's start by priming.
I'll be priming these minis, and primer is used to help paint stick onto the 3D prints better. I'm gonna make sure I get all sides of them, so I'm gonna rotate them around. And this cage, I'm priming gray. This one I'll be priming white. And we'll see how they differ once painted. This guy has some semi-transparent crystals on his side, so I tried to avoid spray painting that area. But now I'm gonna spray paint this white, and I'm on the balcony. It's a beautiful day outside. Make sure to go touch some grass or something. Anyways, goodbye. Or no, I'll edit this out.
So, today I will be painting 6 minis. 2 small earth elementals, 1 primed white and 1 primed gray. This will be a test to see how different the color appears. Will it make it pop? Will it make it duller? I don't know. Next, there are 3 cages. There's 1 gray, 1 white, and 1 unprimed to see a very bare bones test of whether or not priming them makes an effect and how much different the colors will be. All of the cages will be painted the exact same color of silver metallic. And finally, there's a big boy earth elemental. This one has large, thick arms, and I'm just painting it because I'm already painting some elementals, so might as well paint this one too. I start off painting the small boys a dull yellowish color. The idea is to make them look like sandstone of some kind. And generally, I start my minis by painting the base layer of them, and later I'll add in different details so that it looks good. Next, I'll paint the big boy with a base underlayer. I wanted this to look more like mud instead of sandstone, and mud and dirt from the earth that just erupted with trees on its back. So I chose this kind of like poopy brown color. It looks like poop, but don't worry, it looks better at the end. Here's a tip for painting miniatures. While I paint, I generally do multiple different minis that have similar colors, and additionally, I also add in a few simple minis that won't take too much time, but will waste some time. The reason for this is while the small elementals are drying, I can paint layers onto the large one, and then after I do that, I start painting these cages. So by the time I get back to the small elementals, they're pretty much already dried, and I don't have to wait for anything to finish drying, and I can just paint. So during this video, I'm going to be jumping back and forth between mainly these 2 elementals, but right now I'm doing these cages. They're the most bare bone test for priming, like I said earlier. I will be doing absolutely nothing. This is just a test of different priming examples. 0 differences. By the time I'm done with the cages, the small elementals are almost done. Let's call the small elementals Tom and Jerry. So I give Tom and Jerry a light brown coat, and I do a technique called dry brushing, where I wipe most of the paint off of the brush so that I don't cover all of the yellow underlayer, and I think it works quite well for these minis. Once I finish dry brushing, the large elemental, let's call her Francine, is ready to paint. And this is when I notice that the trees on top of her tangle and wrap around the limbs. So I find a nice brown, which is slightly darker than Tom and Jerry's outer layer, and start painting the trees and the roots down the body. I am sure some of you are asking, what are elementals? Well, in the imaginary world of Dungeons and Dragons, they are incarnations of elements that make up the universe. They are air, fire, water, and earth primarily. On the basic primal planes of existences, known as the inner planes, elementals exist freely and naturally. But on outer planes, strong spellcasters can summon them to their service to help them with their own battles and whatever needs the spellcasters might need. Elementals generally resent this call to action, as it bounds them to the spellcaster's will. Now, Earth elementals specifically are like walking hills, with stones and rocks and dirt making up the bulk of their form. They occasionally have little materials, minerals, gemstones inside of their bodies that give them a little bit more details. Earth elementals can glide through the earth as if it were liquid, and land creatures are terrified of these beasts because they can kind of sense anything nearby that's walking on solid ground. It's an ability known as tremor sense. Now, myrmidons are elementals that are conjured and bound into ritually created suits of plate armor. After becoming a myrmidon, usually by some wizard or spellcaster, they have no memory of their former existence as a free elemental. They now only exist to follow the commands of their creators. In my opinion, Francine would be known as a myrmidon. However, she doesn't have any plate armor on the mini, and I don't really like all of the bound to the service of the spellcaster part and not knowing who you are. So instead, I would claim that she has just grown stronger naturally and learned more as a free elemental on a material plane. Material plane is basically Earth. So this story doesn't fit exactly with the descriptions from the book, but that's one thing I love about D&D. You can twist and change the lore or the rules to make it your own game. So to me, Francine is a Myrmidon Earth Elemental, but it doesn't have the tragedy involved with not knowing her home plane. Now, as I continue on with this video, I add a bit more details to the miniatures, bouncing back and forth. One aspect I never ignore is the base of the mini. A boring base can ruin a miniature, so I always try to paint them in some way. In a previous Learn by Painting, I said that I don't replicate minis, I always try to paint them slightly different. And the bases of Tom and Jerry are a perfect way to distinguish them, while we keep the original goal of testing out different primes intact. I give Tom a brown base, and I give Jerry a dark brown base. The dark brown happens to match the first coat of Francine. Another detail that I add is I noticed that Francine's color was very flat. The body was just poop brown. So I make a black/brown mix and added it across the rock sections of the body. It's not a lot, and it's not even added thoughtfully to any specific part, but it still gives the mini more detail and structure to its form. For Francine's base, I paint the rocks a similar dark brown, showing that she erupted from the earth, and I paint the rest of it a decent dark green. I also added a little secret to the bottom of the base. Now that the minis are finished, let's do some comparisons to see how the priming affected the minis. Firstly, between the cages, I will say that painting the unprimed mini was much worse. I had to use more paint to make it look good, so using prime to make the paint stick on it is completely true and absolutely worth it. While I wouldn't say any shade of silver is better than any other shade of silver, we can see that there are differences in the shades. Looking at Tom and Jerry, it is hard to notice big differences. The advice I was given on white versus gray prime is use white for a colorful display and use gray for a realistic look. With that in mind, I think that Tom and Jerry do have subtle differences in tone or shade, while hard to notice. In this case, I'd say I like the white prime a little better, because I want to see color in these minis. Finally, here is an example of using the minis in my D&D campaign, along with some other minis I painted, like this wizard. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please tell me that you liked it, or something, I don't know. My most previous video got over 100 views, which means that it must be good. So if you want to watch that, click this little card somewhere on the screen. Again, thank you for watching, and have a nice day.